From the BBC today, Southport killer admitted carrying a knife 10 times. But you see, it's the 11th time that triggers the government's prevent strategy, and then they would have stopped this all happening. So it wasn't their fault. It was if he'd have just done it 11 times, then the whole problem would have been sorted. Easy. The litany of failures and corruption and incompetence and lies, endless, unending lies and cover-ups from the people that run the show in the UK is truly disgraceful. If the world was just, Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper would be breaking rocks alongside Mr. Rudu Kanubu for the next 25 years. And he's not going to be breaking rocks, is he? He's going to be kept in a cushy little apartment with a treadmill and an Xbox. And then he's going to get out in about 6 years' time. That's what Britain's like. Don't want to redo the old joke, but yes, he really will be a lollipop man outside a primary school in about 10 years' time. I guarantee it. Anyway, Richard Tice, who we all know I've got my problems with, but he was very forthright about this on Patrick Christie's show yesterday.
That we are facing the mother of all cover-ups. I mean, you've just read out there a serious list of extraordinary questions and coincidences, and people want answers. And I gather the Prime Minister is going to give a press conference tomorrow morning. There are suggestions that the Home Secretary is going to give a statement to the House. Let's wait and see. If not, for sure there'll be an urgent question. But I think they need to give a lot of answers very quickly.
The inquiry is going to give those answers.
So hang on. So we can have an inquiry now to kick the can down the road, but they're not prepared to give a national public inquiry into the child gangs because it doesn't suit the Labour Party.
Whoa, settle down. There's no need to start talking like that, Richard. There's no need to link it inexorably to an ideology, a global ideology, that has caused misery and death and mayhem from Southport to Stockholm to San Diego. There's no need to do that, because that looks bad. I'll tell you what, shut up, sit at a piano, play Imagine, yeah? Then we'll all be happy. It's truly unbelievable. Anyway, I'm going to read that BBC story. I'm going to show you a little bit more footage from Patrick Christie's show yesterday. And then I'm going to tell you why, if heads do not roll over this scandal, and that's what it is, a full-blown scandal, if they don't roll over this, it is time to start blaming the people. Because at the end of the day, if gangs of swarthy foreign gentlemen can, with impunity, roger 50,000 children above dirty kebab shops, and then the cherry on top of that appalling sundae is some of them can also murder little girls at dance classes. If the culmination of those two events, 200 events, doesn't cause the British public to get angry enough that every person in the Houses of Parliament should be very concerned about the guillotines getting broke out, then the UK public are a gigantic mass of wet blankets. This story's got legs because it's genuinely appalling. And if it happened 50 years ago, the Houses of Parliament would have got emptied. So sit back, relax, and I'll go through this litany of incompetence, corruption, stupidity, and unending lies. And hopefully by the end of it, it'll be the one time in my entire life where I've thought the English could possibly use being a little bit more French. No, not adultery and refusal to shower. Not that. I mean, public trials and very scared politicians. Let's have a read, shall we? Right then, so Mr. Kanubu, obviously he was carrying a knife 10 times, and obviously our leaders didn't do anything about it because he's got hair like Wyclef Jean. He admitted carrying a knife on 10 separate occasions, but was still able to buy a blade on Amazon. The Home Secretary said that's the problem. Several agencies failed to identify the danger posed by the teenager as he developed an obsession with extreme violence. And why did he have an obsession with extreme violence, I wonder? Again, this is laughable. Nobody will mention the I word, the M word, or talk about the pot-bellied epileptic dwarf who plagiarised the Bible and made his own religion up. Nobody will talk about that. That's the motivation behind all of these things. It's the only thing that links every attack. But nobody will talk about it. The government refuses to mention the words. Think of this logically. It's not even difficult. It's not even complicated. What ideology links 9/11, 7/7, Lee Rigby, gangs, Axel Rudu Kanubu, the Madrid train bombing, the Bataclan massacre, the Beslan school massacre, Benghazi, and Charlie Hebdo. There you go, I've just reeled off 10. What ideology links them all? I just can't put my finger on it. On Monday, Rudu Kanubu pleaded guilty to killing. Yeah, we know all that. This is more filler, isn't it? Are you going to tell us what he was wearing or what hobbies he was into? Mr. Rudu Kanubu liked to paint miniatures. He was an avid swimmer. Well, he wasn't going to be a swimmer, was he? He liked playing football, and his favourite team was Chelsea. Shut up and tell us why he did it. Earlier, the Prime Minister warned of a new and dangerous threat from violence-obsessed individuals. Brilliant. Is your swamp bubbling away in your bladder yet? Is it? Because it definitely should be. They're still lying now. They won't talk about the gigantic, lumescent, neon yellow elephant in the room. Nobody will talk about it. They're doing what they always do, which is obfuscating. And now they're going to tell you, it gets worse, that the real problem is the ability to buy knives, as if they aren't so ubiquitous that every house in the UK has 20 in it. Cooper told the Commons it was a total disgrace that he was able to buy a knife on Amazon, despite having a prior conviction. Yvette, I wouldn't trust you to walk the family dog. You are so thick. If I tasked you with walking the family dog, you'd feed it into a wood chipper. Is this how you do it? Is this how you walk dogs? No, Yvette, it isn't. And it definitely isn't how you run a country. You lying sack of rats. Yeah, the problem here isn't the ability to buy knives on Amazon. As usual. As usual. Douglas Murray said this is a very British problem. Something happens and we piss around on the periphery of it and talk about everything but the problem. Do you remember? I think he was on about Tony Romo regarding the swarthy gangs of diddlers. And he said they're out there messing around on the periphery saying, oh, well, the real problem is letting people like Tony Romo say things. No, that's not the real problem. The real problem is letting little girls get banged like a barn door in a hurricane by 39-year-old blokes above kebab shops. That's the problem. It's not talking, because if that wasn't happening, we'd have nothing to talk about, would we? And the same applies here. The problem isn't Amazon selling knives, you human sausage. The problem is people following an ideology that tells them to murder children. You're never going to get rid of all the knives. They talk about Americans, how you can't get rid of guns because there's too many guns in circulation now, like 1 billion. Are you going to get rid of knives? That's probably the only thing we've got more of than they have. Every house in the UK has got 20 knives in it. The problem isn't the knives. We've always had knives. We had knives in the 1950s and the 1960s, and you didn't see soldiers getting the nappers lopped off in the middle of London, and you didn't see little girls getting stabbed at dance classes, and guess what? We had loads of knives in the 1950s. Christ almighty, you couldn't move for knives in the 1950s and the 60s. Honestly, Google it. In the 1960s, we had knives coming out of our arseholes, and none of them ended up in little girls' faces. Weird that, innit? It has also emerged that Rudu Kanubu has been referred to the anti-extremism programme Prevent on 3 separate occasions, and they still claim with a straight face that he wasn't a regular at Allen's, and he definitely didn't follow an ideology, and he definitely wasn't a terrorist, even though he had terrorist training manuals, was preparing ricin, loved the epileptic pot-bellied midget, and was 3 times visited by the Prevent strategy, which, I'll give you a clue, isn't targeted towards Mormons, Hindus, or agnostics. Yeah, never once has any of those groups ever been visited by Prevent. So, can you work it out yet? The Home Secretary said the public inquiry would be a whitewash, just like the reporting to the diddlers, who told a load of lies and said that it had nothing to do with race or ideology. Other areas of interest likely to include are the 5 separate occasions that the constabulary officers from Lancashire responded to calls from his home address. So he's a career dirtbag. Repeated referrals to safeguarded services and mental health services. A referral to a youth offending team after his conviction for a violent offence. He broke a kid's wrist with a hockey stick at school, and he wanted to take a knife there as well. Cooper said 162 people referred to Prevent last year over concerns related to school massacres and a wider challenge of violence and extremism, but still not a mention of the I word or the M word, and the number of children investigated for involvement with terrorism has increased threefold in 3 years. But remember, he definitely wasn't a terrorism, and he did it for no good reason. He did it because Doctor Who has declined in popularity, and he was a really big fan, and it made him very, very angry. Yeah. And then finally, the government said tech companies must remove extreme material. So there we have it. It's so ludicrous. It's funny. It's so ludicrous, it's funny. So the real problem here is Amazon selling knives, yeah, and tech companies not doing enough to silence and ban people. That's the problem, yeah. And the ideology that motivates thousands and thousands of angry men to commit appalling atrocities all across the Western world. The ideology that links all of those aforementioned attacks. The ideology that demands submission and powerfully motivates young men that are so enthralled of it, they're willing to kill themselves just to end the lives of their perceived enemies, like Mr. Salman Abedi, that fine upstanding Welsh choir boy from Libya, to march into a pop concert and redecorate the walls in a particularly dark hue of crimson. The ideology that motivates all of this, every major incident from the last 25 years, that has resulted in a catastrophic death toll in the thousands across Europe. Not a mention of it. Not a single mention of it. Not one mention of the I word or the M word in that entire article from the government, from the Prime Minister, from Yvette Cooper, from Liverpool Constabulary, from any of them. So to sum up, you are being lied to. You are sacrificing your children on the altar of political correctness because they're also in submission to a certain ideology, apparently. And I'll let this fine gentleman off GB News sum up before I leave.
The facts are that people have been sent to prison in this country for inciting racial hate, for putting on the internet that this was a terrorist attack. If it subsequently comes out that Keir Starmer, Yvette Cooper, senior prosecutors knew, and I asked the question, if they knew at the time, if this comes out in the public inquiry, Starmer, Cooper, the chief constable, will all go.
He was 100% right on the money, bang on, except for one thing. He said they will go. Will they? If they had any shame, if they weren't walking toilets, if they had an iota of decency, honesty or integrity in their entire gipping frames, right, then they would go. But maybe they won't. Maybe they'll cling on like the parasites they are. But his point was a salient one. Keir Starmer, Yvette Cooper and the chief of the police did and do know that it was 100% evidenced by the ricin, the Al-Qaeda manuals and his own words and deeds. It definitely was 100% a terrorist attack. Just like Lee Rigby, just like Manchester Arena, just like 7-7, Borough Market, London Bridge, Bataclan, Charlie Hebdo, Brussels bombing. I can reel them off. I can reel them off for hours. It's a global problem, and our leaders refuse to grasp the nettle. All they do is lie about it and cover for them. So it should be treason. They should be tried for treason, found culpable in the deaths of not just the little girls in Southport, but everyone who has been a victim of that ideology on British soil for the last 25 years, and a lot of them should be getting nicked. And my nemesis, Philip Rutnam, he should be locked in a cell with the largest, most terrifying homosexual surprise sex adherent that we can find in the entire British penal system. So, yeah, that's me. Done for the day. Let me know if you disagree with any of the above. If you can genuinely find any evidence that suggests that this wasn't a terrorist attack and the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary didn't know that, please send me it, because I'm telling you, this seems to be nailed on, bank to rights. See you later. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments. Find me some evidence if you can bring yourself to disagree because you've got two brain cells to rub together, and I'll see you all tomorrow. All right? Total pip. Cheers.